Okay, magandang umaga, magandang hapon at magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat dahil tayo napapanood hindi lang po dito sa Pilipinas kundi sa buong mundo. So ito pong muli si Shaine Pe, host ng Usapang Kabayan at sa mga avid natin mga televiewers natin dito sa ating programang Usapang Kabayan, pasensya na po at ngayon lang po ako ulit nakapag-live. Kasi medyo na-busy ang beauty po ninyo dahil sa mga iba pang commitment dahil syempre rampant na po ngayon ang eleksyon so medyo na-busy po tayo. Pero I'll promise you, um, simula po itong April, magkakaroon po tayo ng mga iba't ibang klase ng guestings and of course dito sa ating programa Usapang Kabayan. And marami po tayong magiging guest, mga importanteng tao, mga VIPs, and ang ating mga tatalakayin ay mga lahat ay mga makakapupulutan po natin ng aral at of course mga important knowledge po natin para magamit po natin sa ating pang-araw-araw na kabuhayan, di ba po? By the way, since napapanahon po ngayon ng eleksyon, ang aking i-guest po ngayon is another presidential candidate. Okay? Before, nung mga nakaraang linggo, meron po tayong gines during the yung isa yan sa mga dialogue and open forum na ginanap sa Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands, located in Intramuros yun. And isa sa mga tatlong guests na na-feature na po natin dito sa ating programa Usapang Kabayan ay si Mr. Leody de Guzman, isa sa mga presidential aspirants. And of course, si Dr. and attorney by profession, Jose Montemayor Jr., isa rin sa mga presidential candidates. And of course, si Mr. Ernesto Ernie Abella, former presidential spokesperson for PRRD and former DFA Undersecretary for Strategic Communications and Research and another presidential aspirants. And ngayong araw po na to, meron tayong special guest ulit dito sa Dialogue and Open Forum ng Chamber of the Philippine Islands. At pakinggan po natin ang kanyang plataforma. Actually, maganda po talaga ang ibinigay na EComP5 o yung ibig sabihin natin Economic Compass Pillar 5 ng Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands. Bakit po? Kasi dito po dun sa EComP5, nasa-summarize po lahat yung kumbaga yung plataforma ng bawat kandidato. Ano-ano po ba yung 5 EComP5 o yung sinasabi nilang Economic Compass Pillar 5. Ito yung pinaka-importante sa lahat na dapat alam po ng mga presidente at kasama po yan sa plataforma po nila. Number 1, the Filipino, and of course yung education. Para maging international class ang ating edukasyon. Okay, ano po ba ang gagawin ng ating mga presidential aspirants para maging competitive tayo sa international market? Okay? Number 2, yung industries and businesses para maging globally competitive tayo. Number 3, the government. Ano ba yung good governance at yung 12 traits nito. Okay? And number 4, the infrastructure and environment. And of course, yung number 5, our economy. The economy. Diverse, self-reliance, and wealthy. So, ito pong 5 na to which is they call EComP5 or which means Economic Compass Pillar 5 ay yan po yung mga din-define ng mga presidential aspirants na nag-guest o fini-feature po sa Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands. So, hindi ko na po ito patatagalin at panoorin po natin ang isa sa mga special guest po natin. Ito po ay walang iba kundi si Mr. Norberto Gonzales, former Secretary of National Defense and National Security Advisor and another presidential aspirant po. Okay, direct, paki-upload na po yung video para mapanood na ng ating mga viewers. I hope, guys, na magustuhan po ninyo ito and i-analyze po ninyo lahat po ng mga presidential candidates na ginigest po natin dito sa ating programang Usapang Kabayan ay kapag pag-aralan po natin, maging matalino po tayo, maging mapanuri po tayo, especially po dun sa kanilang plataforma at background ng bawat kandidato para makapamili po tayo ng tamang kandidato na magli-lead for another 6 years sa ating bansa. Okay, Direk, paki-play na.
Prize for the national anthem. To be led by Ms. Laarni Lozada from Pinoy Dream Academy Season 2 Grand Champion.
Bayang magiliw, perlas ng silanganan, alam ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay, lupang hinirang, duyan ka na ang magiting sa manlulupig. Di ka pasisiil sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw, may dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal, ang kislap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning, ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim, lupa ng araw ng luwalhatit pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo, aming ligaya na pag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Thank you very much. Please remain standing for the invocation to be led by Attorney Ramon A. Pedrosa, Chairman Emeritus of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty God, we are gathered today in the midst of one crisis after another, affecting the life of this nation. As we prepare our membership and the nation to face the challenges of the next general elections for the electoral years 2022 to 2028, we are met today with one of the national candidates for the presidency of this republic. Therefore, we beseech you, O Lord, in your great mercy, to direct our thoughts, our actions today with your holy inspiration, and carry them through with the assistance of your grace, so that every discussion today in this forum on the 5 economic compass pillars of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands may always begin from you and through you be happily ended for your greater glory. This we ask through Jesus, your only Son, our brother and Lord. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Please be seated. And now for the opening statement, we'll hear from Mr. Benigno Enrique Fort, Chairman of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce of Philippine Islands, which is the provenance and oldest economic business institution with its origin founded in 1886, we welcome the presence of our special presidential guests, as well as everyone attending in person and virtually. The Chamber's Economic Compass Pillars 5, or EComP5, was began to be crafted 7 years ago in 2014 and will be the theme of a major conference in 2022. As a prelude to said conference, we have given advance copies of EComP5 to each of the presidential guests and invited them to individually present on different dates the responses and comments thereto in a hybrid dialogue and open forum. We invite everyone to dwell on the contents of Economic Compass Pillars 5 as we listen to and dialogue with our special presidential guests. It is hoped that EComP5 will help the country rebuild its glorious past, and that indeed history builds the future.
Thank you very much to Mr. Benigno Enrique Fort. And now to introduce this afternoon's special guest, we'd like to call on Attorney Seferino T. Benedicto Jr., Corporate Secretary of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands.
Okay. Our honored guest was born on April 7, 1947 in Balanga, Bataan, and he finished his Bachelor of Science in Pre-Med at the Ateneo de Davao in 1968. He is a Master in National Security, or he took his Master's in National Security Administration from the National Defense College of the Philippines. We all know him as a government servant. But before he entered government service, our honored guest had a long experience in trade unionism and organizing the peasant sector, for which he is now currently the chairman of the Partido Demokratiko Socialista ng Pilipinas. Our honored guest served also as presidential advisor for special concerns to our President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo from February 2001 to January 2004. He then served as National Security Advisor and Director General of the National Security Council from February 2005 until the end of President Arroyo's term in June 2010. Concurrently, our honored guest served briefly as the 32nd Secretary of the National Defense from July to August 2007, and back again as the 34th Secretary of National Defense on November 2009 to June 2010. He also served in brief capacities to President Arroyo as political advisor, officer in charge of the Office of Political Coalition Affairs, and as Presidential Chief of Staff. He has more than 20 years of experience in conflict management and peace negotiations in the Philippines, having served as peace panel member in talks with the Moro National Liberation Front, which signed the final agreement with the government of the Republic of the Philippines in 1996, and as principal senior official in back-channel efforts in the talks with the Moro Islamic Liberation Front and the National Democratic Front. Ladies and gentlemen, our honored guest, Secretary Norberto B. Gonzales, our presidential candidate.
Thank you very much, Attorney Benedicto. And now to give us an overview and the mechanics of today's dialogue and to talk more about the Economic Compass Pillars 5, we'd like to call on Mr. Jose Luis Yulo Jr., President of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands.
Thank you very much. Why Economic Compass Pillars 5? For history to build the future? Ladies and gentlemen, the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands is the oldest business economic institution whose advocacies, programs, and projects from its founding in 1886 contributed to usher the country to become a leading economy in GDP per capita in the ASEAN and in Asia in the 1960s. In the 1960s, in GDP per capita, the Philippines was second to Singapore in the ASEAN and second to Japan in neighboring Asia, ahead of China, Taiwan, and South Korea. Martial law imperatives made the Chamber take a back seat from 1977 to 2014, the year it realigned as a providence of business economic institutions when the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, recognizing its status, bestowed onto the Chamber markers in 3 languages: Spanish, English, and Filipino, the languages that span the Chamber's existence. By the mid-1990s, the Philippines sadly slid down from 2nd to 5th position in the ASEAN, overtaken by Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, and Thailand. By 2021, the Philippines again slid down further from 5th to 7th position, overtaken now by Singapore, Brunei, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam in the ASEAN. And from being ahead to now being behind China, Taiwan, and South Korea. Therefore, as a continuing guide for the Chamber, the government, and country to help rebuild its glorious past, the Chamber herein adopts as its work program for the coming years the advocacy History Builds the Future, Economic Compass Pillars 5, or EComP5, composed of the following. Pillar number 1, the Filipino and education. And its relevant compass is top of the world. Pillar number 2, industries and businesses. Its compass is globally competitive. Pillar number 3, the government. The compass is good governance with 12 traits. Pillar number 4, infrastructure and environment. The compass is heaven on earth. Pillar number 5, the economy will be diverse, self-reliant, and wealthy. Each of the 5 pillars has implementing mechanisms as the sub-compasses of every pillar. As we proceed with this dialogue and open forum with our special presidential candidate guest, we will first present every pillar, the contents of every pillar, after which we will ask our special guest for his response and comment, followed by a question and answer from the attendants in person and from Zoom. And then we will proceed again to pillar number 2 and so on and so forth. Therefore, our special presidential candidate guests will be responding and commenting 5 times to each of the 5 pillars, after which we will have an open forum and dialogue discussion. I hope everybody participates in this very important speech.
Thank you very much to Mr. Yulo, President of the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands. And so now we begin our discussion with this afternoon's presidential candidate, former Secretary Norberto Gonzales. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for being with us here today, sir. Good
Thank you.
afternoon, po. All right, sir. So without further ado, let us begin. As Mr. Yulo explained, we will go through each pillar one by one. And our first pillar for today is the Filipino and education. And the compass for this is top of the world. The first implementing mechanism mentioned under this particular pillar and compass is best education, meaning every Filipino has access to the best education in academics, critical thinking, new technology, and other fields, including universal moral values, ethics, good manners, and right conduct, and must be correctly trilingual in Filipino, English, plus another dialect or language. Former Secretary Gonzales, your thoughts on this po?
Well, what can I say? It's almost complete.
Very detailed, Secretary
Very detailed,
Gonzales.
That's why.
Uh-huh.
Maybe what I can just add is that when I'm saying that my 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 dream for the country is to become first world. No, and I believe that education is its primary objective before this comes about. The only thing that I would like to add to this first compass is pillar is the I'd like to bring our people to have attention to this existing divide in our society. Seems to have that we have divided our society to rich and poor, and this is very evident in the educational system that we have in the country today. Seems to me that we have an education for the poor and education for the rich. I think we have to attempt to remove this divide. So I am saying that what we need is a common standard for have a common standard for our schools. Whether they're let's remove this standard for the rich and for the poor. Let's upgrade, for example, the private sector in its education programs. If the private sector would want more assistance from government, we shall give it. And in the case of the public sector, of course, we can just add more budget so that they can measure up to the standard of the private sector. And something very important that I can already get from Pillar 1, giving our young people the best. That is why I was thinking that should we be in government, we will probably instruct all the ambassadors to begin identifying the best institutions, educational institutions in their country of responsibility, and we will establish uh, agreements with these universities. Our intention is to really bring the best education that we can find in the world for our young people.
Thank you, sir. Sir, just to clarify, by this, do you mean not just a standard curriculum for all, because there is already the same curriculum that everybody adheres to, but do you also mean in terms of facilities, the same standards in terms of facilities and quality of teachers?
Yes, of course. Because we this is very evident. And if you ask any young person, if if he thinks that there is this divided, they will say yes. You know, it seems to me that we have tolerated this very unfortunate and very sad uh, reality in our society.
Thank you, sir. Now, another mechanism under the Filipino and education pillar is quality health, where every Filipino is taught nutrition and healthcare and has access to both in his lifetime, with focus on nutritious feeding from conception to 5 years of age to prevent stunted growth.
You know, this is a problem. I can just say yes, really, to this. It's very well taught. And may I just add that because of our experience with the pandemic, it has become paramount and important that nutrition, the right amount of food and the right kind of food will have to be provided to the entire population, not just our young people, because it has something to do with building the immune system of our society. That is why I was thinking we really have to push our agricultural sector to make sure that this happens, not only for our very young people, but to the entire population.
All right. Thank you, sir. And next, this one also is very interesting. The third mechanism under the pillar of the Filipino in education. Every Filipino excels in at least one profession, skill, or talent, and has a minimum K to 12 education, with college graduates comprising at least 30% of the population. Sir, for you, is this doable? 30% of the population college graduates.
Well, if we want to be first world, we will have to go beyond this objective. Although this is really very good, I would think, Mr. Yulo, this is minimum. We will aspire for the with 30%. So that's the minimum. I agree, but we have to aspire for a higher percentage. Become first world. I'm telling our young people, governments that spend so much money in upgrading our standard of education. They have to be very serious schooling and, if possible, aspire to fight to have, to do, to have excellence in everything that they do. Very, very important, you know.
Thank you, sir. And mission D is patriotic yet global. Every Filipino must know Philippine history, love of country, and cherish Filipino culture while respecting other cultures. National patriotism is the base towards globalism.
Yes, 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 yes. This is very important, especially in the situation we're facing today. I have been saying now, uh, if we want other nations to respect us, we have to show that we love our country, that we are even prepared to offer our life to defend it.
Okay. Sir, under your under a Gonzales administration, what steps will be taken to make sure that history is taught properly to young people today? Because that's what others are saying, that there are so many different kinds of information being put out there on the internet. So how would you safeguard against false information and all these other things, po?
What you see, it's actually an upgrading the quality of our education. That is probably one big step in making sure that our young people, our nation, our population as a whole will have this critical thinking, that they can distinguish between false and true. Very important. And when we think of educating our people and our young people especially, we're not just thinking of our schools. Very important is the role of our how do you call that, our media platforms. As I have observed in other countries, television, for example, now social media, they form an integral part of our educational system. They have to be part of this, so that maybe, I don't know, I do not want to talk of censorship, but we have to talk of certain probably agreements and regulations among practitioners, not just government, to make sure that they have become part of building not only knowledge but sentiment, what we call national sentiment, in making sure that we have this very, very important sentiment of our people, that of patriotism.
Thank you very much, sir. And now, the last mechanism under this is citizenship duties knowledge. Every Filipino knows the Constitution and basic laws needed for daily life, especially his or her duty and responsibility in electing only capable, honest officials, the best and the brightest, and to hold them periodically accountable.
I wish the chamber is already successful. Then we won't be, we won't have this difficulty choosing our candidates during this election. you know, this is it. This is what we need to every Filipino. Uh, if I become president, Mr. President, I promise, we will help in doing this. This is very important in building a mature citizenry.
Thank you very much, sir. And now we move on to the second pillar, industries and businesses. The compass for this is globally competitive. And the first mission or implementing mechanism would be industries that connect our islands and industrialize the country. This means Filipino owned or controlled companies are leaders in design, in software engineering, hardware manufacturing, as well as in the production of parts and final products and their operations of the following that number one, connect our islands. So we talk about short haul seacraft, short haul aircraft, ICT, and other new technology.
Well,
And sorry, sir.
sure.
We
Continue.
finish this one, sir, and then we'll go through it.
Uh,
The second is other manufacturing industries required for basic self-reliance, security, and wealth are prioritized by number one, making use of the country's being an archipelago to excel in sea-based manufacturing industries. And number two, making use of its other natural resources as inputs to manufacturing-based industries within the country. And lastly, the professions and service industries that complement industrialization are among the best. This one is a bit lengthy, sir.
can you
Yes,
pass
we
back
go back to this first part, sir.
the first
Connecting our
part? Yeah,
islands.
yeah. One of the amendments that I want from charter change is how to divide our nations into autonomous regions instead of attempting to make it federal. I think an autonomous regions would be good. Uh, that being said, what is important is to do two things. No? It's important for our people to be able to have access comfortably between regions, and at the same time it's so connected that it becomes one whole nation. I'm actually dreaming, for example, of a mainland Visayas through bridges and roads. So what will be the move of government when it comes to this? I will be looking into the budgeting system of the government. We will make sure that the treatment of our air, our land, and sea transport will be equal as far as the budgeting process is concerned. We will have to develop all three equally instead of just emphasizing the land aspect of our mobility in the country. We will have air, land, and sea, which means that bridges, as much as we can, if it is feasible, will be built to connect all our islands together. At the same time, we will allow yung ating mga sea crafts kung pwede mas mabilis ng konti kaysa sa nararanasan natin ngayon. Since we are aspiring to be first world, we will actually be encouraging the most advanced when it comes to sea crafts. Well, your planes are already doing its job on our road system. Maybe we'll include the railways, which we don't have yet, really.
And sir, we move on to the next, which is making use of the country's being an archipelago to excel in sea-based manufacturing industries and other natural resources as inputs to manufacturing-based industries within the country itself.
I would really ask the chamber. I think this is very, very important. and essential to our economic growth. I would really ask the chamber to please, no, talk with other businesses. I think that perhaps the members of the chamber understand this beautiful um, objective when it comes to our manufacturing. But we do have businessmen today that may not want to do this because of profit. I think that the chamber will probably have to do a lot of convincing and even training and even giving more awareness to our business people that this is something for the long term. It will probably we have provide us a more dynamic but very stable uh, economy. Wag yung mga businessman na probably will short circuit this this these requisites in order to have profit quickly.
Mr. Yulo?
Uh, Thank you very much for your comment, Secretary Gonzales. Um, I think it is a concept that must be accepted not only by businessmen, but by politicians and the general public. The idea that we should not just get our natural resources, export it to Japan or other countries, make them build things out of it, and then we import back the finished product. If you really look at it, the Philippines gets nothing but maybe labor to hit the rock with an axe and then to transport it. Whereas the other country will get paid by their people becoming highly skilled, their designers, their technology to invent products that they in turn will sell to us at a higher value. And you're correct, Secretary. The problem here is that we are short sighted and we only think of the profit in extraction, not in the profit that will be greater in value if we use the extracted raw material to make a finished product. So it is a paradigm shift in mentality. And the businessman alone cannot do that unless politicians, media, everybody in government understands that true wealth comes from what God gave you and what God makes, and what man makes out of what God gave you. So there is something wrong in the mentality and the process, wherein a mayor or a congressman would just want to get as much as they can, as far as his license to exploit, and he doesn't care about the environment. He just wants to export whatever he can and to deplete the resources of the country as fast as he can, rather than taking out only what a factory will need to produce the finished product. So it's a paradigm shift.
Well, this is some of my frustration lately because when I decided to run for president, I have expressed my intention is about reforming our political system and the practice of our politicians, and now the orientation of our politicians, especially in matters like this. I'm happy. I'm really happy that we have existing institutions that can already provide us with some guidance on how the reform, especially of those in the field of economy, to shift this paradigm. This is very important for building a first world country. Without this one, I don't know if we will be successful. So I would like to inform the chamber that as we look into our charter, as we look into the kind of political system that we will have in the future, should we succeed, this will be this will be part of the agenda for discussion in reforming our well, as you said, the paradigm shift. That's very important.
Thank you very much, sir. Um, Now we move on to Mission B, Filipino owned companies. Per constitutional and legal requirements, companies are truly Filipino owned, especially those relating to national security and interests, and are competitively dominant in market share and revenues within the country. Economic nationalism is intrinsically essential for bilateralism and for globalization.
Again, again, this is I wish we have this. In fact, I'm anticipating that our major difficulties, especially when we address our business community, is when we start introducing ideas like this. It will be very difficult because I don't know if I'm really being too judgmental, but I have said that one of the reasons why we are not really advancing as a nation is that part of our elite doesn't seem to love our country. And we will have to somehow encourage this nationalism. I couldn't add more to, to what to what the chamber has written. I can always say that we will adopt this one.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. And still related to this is Mission C, foreign owned companies. Foreign ownership is most welcome, but must be dispersed strategically among different countries. The Constitution and relevant laws are adhered to, and national security and patrimony are truly safeguarded.
When we say that we will disperse foreign ownership strategically, are we talking of because we uh, are we talking of regions? I mean, the region because we say foreign ownership is most welcome, but must be dispersed strategically among countries to avoid monopoly control. How about when we allow foreign ownership with domestically in our own country? So is this about the ASEAN region?
Uh, no, Mr. Secretary, this is about uh, in the Philippines, we welcome foreign ownership,
I see.
but we should make sure foreign ownership or investment is spread out among countries of the world so that not one country will dominate and control our economy.
Which is what is probably happening in the country today. That we have allowed the domination of at least one country. Yeah. Again, yes, we will do this.
Mhm. All right. Thank you, sir. And next, Mission D is brands Filipino owned. Products and services conceptualized and or made by Filipinos, made by majority Filipino owned companies should have Filipino owned branded names and trademarks used and protected worldwide. Sir, you agree po with pushing the Filipino brand?
Of course, I'm just wondering how we will do this. It's kind of overwhelming already at this point. Um, we will need tough business partners in this one because even improving the kind of brands we have, the quality of our production will have to be looked into because it's not just a matter of preferring a brand. It's also a matter of our own people preferring the brand because they're better. No, this is something we have to look into.
Offhand, sir, are there certain products or services that you think your administration should push, if ever?
Well, marami, mostly in food. Nobody can beat our crabs. Nobody can beat our shrimp. Sorry, I'm from
Bataan.
Bataan. Nobody can beat our mangoes. You know,
Oh.
there's a lot and lots of things that we can brand. Our coconut
Mhm.
is sweeter than the coconuts I taste in Thailand. Oh. these things, when it comes to branding, I can only think right away of the food that we have, because even speculating that a part of our campaign for economic growth is our food.
Mhm.
I know also of certain entrepreneurs that are planning to already put in cans our lechon,
Mhm.
our dinuguan, our sinigang, already in cans. You know, uh, there's a certain uniqueness in some of the food that we have. I will agree. I will agree very much on this one. No.
Thank you very much, sir. And Mission E for pillar number 2 is expanded Filipino equity and ownership. Majority of Filipinos own equity in companies that give them dividends and capital appreciation. Land is truly owned by Filipino citizens as per the Constitution, and ownership is spread out.
Yeah, we will have to study
Mhm.
how how we will how we will prevent our Filipinos from being how do you call that? I know dummies. Anti-dummy law will be very important in this particular pillar. Yes, we will have to look seriously into the anti-dummy law in the Philippines.
All right. Thank you, sir. So, sir, at this point, we have some questions. We have a question from Zoom, and I shall read it out po. From Mr. Carlo Realiza. His question is, are you in favor of 100% ownership of foreign schools in the Philippines?
What I want really is for us to relate with the best schools in the world. Ownership is another matter. No? Uh, I don't think we need 100% ownership in to be able to tap the best universities that we can find all over the world. No? What is important is for the state to make sure that our universities can be upgraded and can begin to relate with other universities in the world, considering the possible expense of this. I think the primary reason why we are saying that we will allow 100% ownership of universities in the world is we wanted the quality of that particular university to be located in the Philippines. No? I consider education as not necessarily just business. When I look at the possibility of universities being owned by foreigners 100%, I think it's more the business side, but not the intrinsic requirement of us getting the best knowledge that we can find from all over the world.
All right. Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions? We open the floor to questions both here and on Zoom. If there are any questions, yes, Attorney Benedicto. Sir, we have a microphone po.
Sir, can you hear me?
Um,
Can it be heard? Yeah, when you spoke about the double standards of education, about the divide between the rich and the poor, I agree with you there. There are certain schools that people who have the means would prefer their children to go to rather than schools that are like mababang paaralan ng tralala, no? Which to most people would be uh, would be having a certain education that would not be at par. So my question is more of like, how do we address this when you mentioned about that? And then connected to this is, how come our graduates even from UP, even from Ateneo, when they go abroad, when they work abroad, not necessarily as OFWs, they have achieved a certain degree, but then they are not recognized as such. I know of people who went to Australia, engineers, but when they started to work, they had to become draftsmen. I know of doctors who went to the United States. They could not practice. And sometimes, may nagsabi pa sa akin na, mas magaling pa ako sa doktor na yan eh. But he could not say anything because he would be committing a crime. He's not the doctor. No? How do we do this? How do we address these questions? And then another one is, I don't know if this is related to education, but I find that we are very parochial in doing things. No? An example would be, we just celebrated last year our 500 circumnavigation of the world by Elcano. But the Philippines emphasized Lapu-Lapu, a small chieftain who is supposed to have fought for Philippine independence when there was no Philippines to talk about then yet. So this is what I see. We are very parochial. So how do we address those questions?
Well, as you can see, the reason why we are saying that there are two things we need to address. First is this divide that we allow certain schools, no, to adopt a certain standard na pwede na yan, total may hirap lang naman ang nandyan eh. At saka yung mga may hirap, bakit mo pagkakasayahan pa ng quality education yan? Mag-made lang naman yan sa abroad eh. You know, this kind of talks. Very sad, but it's happening in our society today. What I'm trying to say is, first, on the level of policy, we want to make sure that all institutions in the Philippines will have a common standard. And we can tap our educators on this. I have heard enough reklamo from our private sector when it comes to our education. They wanted to upgrade their standard. And I said, what is lacking? They say money. So we need a little tweaking of our the way we determine where our funds are going. I mean the public funds, because in our country there's this limitations that private sector cannot use public funds. I know that in many advanced countries in the world, precisely that fund is public, meaning for everyone. So we will have to make some adjustments so that the private sector can actually access from the public fund, especially in matters like education. And number two, when it comes to the public sector of our education, walang problema yon, wala na tayong babaguhin batas dyan eh. Itataas mo lang talaga ang budgetary required ng ating schools. And I would really want our educators, both in the private sector, in the public sector, to talk, you know, about time we have a common standard for both rich and poor. Let us not encourage anymore this divide in our society. So that's the first step. The second step is, let us accept it. The best standard of education in the Philippines is still substandard when it comes to the standard when we compare them to the other centers of knowledge and education in other parts of the globe. We need to go up, especially for our young people. If we cannot achieve this kind of standard, if we will not pour resources to make sure that our young people will have access to the best education you can find in other parts of the world, we will not become first world. You know, look at what all those countries that have overtaken us economically. They send their sons and daughters to the best educational institutions in the world. In my thinking, let's not send anymore. Let us send this, the best standards here, so that, we are more than 100 million people. How many young people do we have these days, But let's bring the best that we can find in the world in our institutions here. And that is possible by working memorandum of agreements. We will ask our embassies, we will ask our foreign department Affairs Department to consider this as one important uh, aspect of establishing relations with countries. You know, we have cultural agreements, we have economic agreements. Now I'm thinking of defense agreements. But let's have agreements when it comes to our education, because we need to make sure that the best education available in the world will be available to our young people. I know this is going to be very, very expensive in achieving this, but so what? This is our future. We're building a future here, and there is no cost to this. So that what you are talking about is very, very sad happening to our doctors. Can you imagine that? For example, the building of Dubai as a city. Do you know that our engineers designed Dubai? But have they ever mentioned a Filipino engineer or an architect having done so? Our engineers, architects are mere employees of top architectural firms who were able to get the contract from Dubai, for example. I'm just mentioning one Middle Eastern country. That is why I said, in the future, our Department of Labor will not agree to what we will consider as unfair contracts for work for our people. I remember very well when Jody Venecia was not yet a congressman. He was a businessman. But when he did the port of Saudi Arabia, he secured a contract not for labor, but he said, we will build your port from the cook to the top manager, whole thing. The whole corporation went there and built the port of Saudi Arabia. And nobody can question today that that port is not built by Filipinos. So, well, I'm just citing an example, but this can be done. But before we do this, let's do our homework. Let's you know, put a better standard for our education system. Huwag tayo mahiya. Kasi talaga namang, can you imagine, without us doing anything, our educational system is considered kulelat in the world. When we talk of English, mathematics, simple things, but we are kulelat in the world. Let us not be so mayabang that we will not accept this fact. We will say that we will begin from here, but we will move upward. That is our commitment.
Thank you very much, sir. Do we have more questions po from the floor or via Zoom before we proceed? None? Yes, Attorney Benedicto.
Sure.
I was fascinated by the fact that you said that he had the entire corporation brought to Saudi Arabia to build the port there. Just to show you that in the Philippines, we have what we call the Binondo Intramuros Bridge right behind us, built by Chinese engineers, Chinese construction workers. Even the signs are all in Chinese, simplified Chinese character. So it's just a comment to show you where we are now. And I remember we were because this building was almost got affected. So we had to talk to DPWH. And I also remember, then I asked the question of, we're too concerned with Intramuros. We know where it is. But where does it end on the other side? And I found out that it would demolish San Fernando Bridge, which is a 17th century bridge. So I brought that up. The person I was talking to, and the president is here, he said, meron bang ganyan dito? So I said, teka sandali, gobyerno ka. Ba't hindi mo alam? So I don't know, is government apathetic to what is happening to the Philippines? Apathetic to the Filipino, that public service is now service of the public to them?
Well, we have been looking into the state of our bureaucracy very seriously. I was I was um I was 10 years, almost 10 years in government. You know, our bureaucracy is like our armed forces of the Philippines. They are trained, to obey whatever the top says. So, as I said, kung medyo hindi magaling yung nandyan, kahit anong puwersa mo, hindi gagalaw ang bureaucracy to something better. I will always defend our bureaucracy because I saw them in action. If you know how, in any business enterprise, probably it's the same, no? Kaya nga, in the private sector, I observe that you get the best executives, because the executives matter, especially in a design that we have in the bureaucracy. Number two, you know, in our bureaucracy today, we give them responsibility without the corresponding authority. That's why nobody makes decisions. That is why when something goes wrong in traffic, you blame the president. You know, you go that high. Kasi walang aamin na kasalanan dyan eh. Turo, all the way up. This is how we practice our bureaucracy. Walang responsibility. No, in modern countries, medyo may responsibilidad yung authority, kaya nababawasan din yung corruption. Hindi mo pwede pakialaman kahit clerk lang yan, because his responsibility is very defined and his authority is defined. We don't have that. Same. I'm sorry, I don't want to criticize our present government. But you see, during my time, I often said, the job that I enjoyed most, I had so many jobs during my time in government, and the job I enjoyed most is defense. Because you see, those trained in the military, nagmi-meeting pa lang na ganyan, yung mga aide, mga staff, nag-note taking na yan. And they stay all night to make sure that when you sit in your office in the morning, there's already a note there for you, a summary of what has been discussed and their recommendations. They spend the whole evening, the whole night, preparing. That's what I call real dedication of public service. That's why I said, pag ako'y napasok dyan, maglalagay ako ng maraming general. Ang nangyari mukhang nakarinig na, maglagay nga ng maraming general. But they forgot one very little caveat to that. That your general is only as good as the kind of order you issue. If there are no good orders on top, walang mangyayari kahit napaka-brilliant na general mo, nakakaawa pa, nasisira ang reputasyon. Because they are not able to perform well. Kasi walang maayos na order eh. Our bureaucracy is like that also. So don't be disappointed with our bureaucrats. No? Kasi ang nangyayari sa atin, yung mga pumapasok sa gobyerno natin ngayon, are individuals. Our politicians do not have a coherent appreciation of what a politician should be. They don't even know where the country is going. They only know what will profit their family or their dynasty. Oh, what kind of country do we want for our future, for our children? What kind of society are we planning to build? What is the philosophy? What's your philosophy of man? Nothing. You ask this to our politicians. What? Ano nang alam ng politicians? Anak kasi ako na gano'n eh. Ha? Artista yung tatay ko, artista din ako ngayon eh. You know, so, are we surprised that our country is like this today? It's because of the kind of politicians we have and the kind of political system that we insist on having. Am I out of topic?
No, it's fine, sir. It's still
Sorry,
related to the question.
Medyo, you made me emotional eh. Question mo kasi.
We can feel the passion, sir.
This is our condition today. That's why I said I'm 75 years old. I'm supposed to be relaxing and retiring, but I will run for office because I will challenge the political system and the tradition of our politics because it is destroying our future.
Thank you, sir. This is actually, sir, a good segue to the next pillar because the next pillar is the government. And the compass here is good governance with 12 traits. So the first mechanism for this, the best of citizens are in government, meaning the best qualified for positions are flushed out based on a standard template of qualifications that are verified for fair comparison among elected and appointed candidates. Regular performance accountability is also conducted. So that's similar, sir, to what you were saying right before this, that you have to make sure that the people in position are good people.
You know, nakakatuwa itong ating bureaucracy. You know, ang nangyayari sa ating bureaucracy, laging may dynamics yan, may politika sa loob. You know, sometimes, typically in our bureaucratic offices is that may mga 5 o 10 nagtatrabaho at may mga 20 siguro naglalakwatsa. You know, may mga ganyan eh. Tapos, oftentimes, yung masyadong matatalino dyan, kinakainggitan pa. No? Kaya ang ginagawa nila doon sa mga matatalino at mahuhusay, pinapadala ba sa schooling? Sometimes abroad, sometimes in National Defense College, so ganun. Pinag-graduate ako, marami akong classmate doon na why a year? Pinadala eh. Alam mo nangyayari sila when they return to their office, they no longer have a position. Ginamit yung absence para mawala. Can you imagine this happening in our bureaucracy? But this is happening. Ito ba, katakot-takot na repair to. N+1. You know, we have so degraded our public service. For example, we have allowed our public servant to be insulted. You know, society is run by our bureaucracy. They determine what gets what in terms of service among our people. And yet, you subject them to this kind of insult. Saan ka nagtatrabaho? Gobyerno, corrupt ka. You know? Insultong katakot-takot yan. Very difficult to stay. No? Sabi ko sana, you know, I've been there, I saw it. Alam mo, many of our public servants want to be very good public servants. Kaya lang kasi nasa system eh. Why do we have so much corruption in our bureaucracy? You know, nakakatuwa tayo mga Pilipino eh. Yung ginagamit nating repair sa ayaw nating mangyari, yun talaga ang nagkokos ng nire-repair natin. For example, in our bureaucracy, we say there's so much corruption, therefore we don't trust anybody. Diba? We don't trust. Kaya nga walang corresponding authority ang ating mga bureaucrats eh. Because nobody trusts anybody hanggang dumating na doon sa kataas-taasan. Every bureaucrat have 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 pairs of eyes looking behind. We mistrust everyone. In our bureaucracy, we mistrust people. Kaya ang ating, yung tinatawag natin red tape, becomes so complicated because we don't want anybody taking advantage of a particular step in our bureaucratic process. Kaya tuloy, sabi ko nga kay President Arroyo during my time, ma'am, if we remove 50% of the steps in government transaction, in effect, we're reducing corruption by 50%. Because every step in the government process is actually an opportunity for corruption. Kaya nga kung minsan, marami sa atin eh, can you imagine, magtatransa ka sa isang bagay, kailangan mo pa ng abogado para maintindihan mo yung procedure? Why? That's one of the signs of, I have to explain this para maintindihan na natin yung nangyayari sa gobyerno natin. You know, the reason why, kaya lahat ng trabaho natin napakabagal. Because we mistrust our public servants, we mistrust all of ourselves. Wala talagang trust. If you will ask me, what is the fundamental policy that we need para tanggalin ng corruption, tanggalin yung napakabagal na kalog. We introduce trust back. Let's trust. Kasi alam mo, pagka-trust ka, lilinaw yung procedure eh. At saka kakaunti na lang yan. I can assure you, ito naman ang counter move dito. Siguradong mahuhuli ang manloloko kasi simpleng-simple na eh. Kahit na ordinary citizen doing the transaction will say, niloloko mo ako eh. Makikita mo yun eh. And then we make sure na yung nanloloko mahuhuli. In society, to catch a wrong, to show a wrong is the more important one than punishment. Huwag tayong masyadong mag-intindi ng punishment. Ang intindi natin na ipakita natin ang kamalian at ano ang mali. Yung punishment kasi, tingnan yung nangyayari sa Pilipinas dahil sa laki ng inis natin sa mga ginagawa sa loob ng gobyerno. Gusto natin, ay, dapat yan. Bitayin yan. Dapat yan. Ikulong ng so many years. Actually, we are abusing there also. We tend to punish too much. Yan, hindi na yan humane. Hindi na yan, well, I'm Catholic, so hindi na Catholic yan. Di ba? Iba na yan. Let's balance all of this, you know. Kaya nga sabi ko, yung the best, I can tell you, doble-doble na ang mga doctorates at saka mga masteral ng mga nasa bureaucracy. Kasi nga aral kasi yung sa isang opisina yung nakakainisan. O sige nga, mag-masters ka muna sa London, masters ka muna doon. Pagdating saan ako magtatrabaho? Ibupo ka sa desk, bahala ka na dyan. You know, puno ng experts ang ating bureaucracy. But they are misused, unused, and mistrusted. We will do a lot of one. Kaya ako nga nag-ambisyon akong tumakbo dito. During my stint as public official, I did not dismiss anyone.
Thank you very much, sir. The next mechanism is natural resources used for local-based factories. So to create jobs and higher levels of productive capability, natural resources must be used first and foremost as inputs to value-added manufacturing of end products within the country. Mining or harvesting of minerals and other natural resources purely for exports must be restricted to encourage local manufacturing.
Yun ang hirap talaga itong ginawa ng Chamber of Commerce. Everything is good. Kung ako'y nagugutom lang, hindi na ako sasagot eh. Yes, no na lang ako dito. Kasi puro yes eh. This is really, really good. Let me just add a little bit about this mining and harvesting of minerals, you know. Just a little bit. Very important that we consider all our natural wealth to be owned by our people. Very important yan. And I would add, when we think of responsible, when it comes especially to mining our minerals, you know, and natural resources, let's always think of the future. Our sons, daughters, and sons and daughters of our children. Huwag nating inuubos na kaagad yung mauubos natin ngayon. You know, you have to be, kaya gusto ko to, sorry. Yung sinasabi nyo dito, kailangan naka-program yan. My thinking is that we will create some kind of sovereign fund where all our natural resources will be part of. From there, we will control or regulate how much of our natural resources will be allowed to be exploited at this particular juncture. For example, for this decade, it's this. Kailangan pinag-aaralan natin yan. For example, yung ating Malampaya gas, no? Talagang tinodohan natin, inubos natin yun. Now, 2024, ubos na yung Malampaya. At a time that now we need gas because of the crisis that's happening in the Ukraine. But because puro negosyo puro palakasan Hindi natin iniintindi yung kinabukasan ng ating mga anak at mga apo. Natural resources is a gift of God that we have to be very responsible of. Can you imagine itong minerals natin, the way we're handling our mining today? When I was in office, we flew above the mining, the mining being done in, for example, in Surigao. You know, the way we mine today, we're not just getting the ores. We're cutting the entire mountains because yung mas mahal pa daw yung as a filler. Yung pantambak ba kasi lalo na sa China ginagawa nila yung mga cities nila by the seashore, gumagawa sila ng mga islands. Expert na mga China sa paggawa ng islands kaya ang bilis nila dito sa West Philippine Sea. Expert na sila diyan. They cut entire mountains. And we no longer distinguish between soil and mineral. Nakita ko dito, our chamber is saying, yung raw material, ini-export na lang natin, hindi natin talagang ini-extract yung what is essential. Kaya ang nangyayari, lugin-lugi tayo. Ngayon, hindi lang ore ang ini-export natin, the whole mountain, sand, gravel, soil, diretso kuha lahat yan. Talagang ang pagmamining ngayon, wala na. Nakanahan dyan, kagad yung malalaking barko, pasok na doon. Pati pagsiseparate ng soil and the ore, sa abroad na rin ginagawa. Kaya ayaw lang natin yung ating iron ore in the export kasi ipinrocess natin yan, marami tayong makukuha dyan. Ngayon, hindi lang ore. I want you to know how we are practicing so irresponsible mining in the country today. This is what's happening. Kaya yung sinasabi nating natural resources, we will really have to look into this. Meron kayong sinabi dito sa inyong pamphlet. It's so beautiful. I cannot remember it. I'm 75. But it's something to do with, you know, yung ginagamit natin ngayon, parang ninanakaw na natin sa future. Did I remember it correctly when I read this? But these are very painful realities that we are confronting in our society today.
Thank you very much, sir. The next mechanism that we are to discuss is protector of country, citizens, territory, and patrimony. All branches of government with the military are protectors of the Filipino people, the archipelagic territory, and patrimony of the nation. Laws are clear and are dispensed fairly in a timely manner. How would your administration, sir, implement effectively policies and laws?
Well, what we have to say first is that defense of our territory and our patrimony is no longer just the job of an armed forces. It is the job of an entire nation. This is how we will have to design our policy for defense, internal or even external, because this is what is very important today. For example, if we take the case of the possibility of war with China, this is important. And we should take lessons from experiences of other peoples in the world. For example, in the case of the US and Vietnam War, you know, Vietnam decided to fight the most powerful nation in the world, and nanalo pa. Nanalo pa. And what is it about? It is the tenacity of the Vietnamese people to stand their ground and defend their motherland, whatever the cost. Yun ang nangyari dyan. Kaya napilitan lang umalis yung mga Amerikano. In the case of the Ukrainians today, I think Vladimir Putin was thinking isang linggo lang tapos to eh. With the kind of weapon system that the Russians have. And look what's going on. They have to enter Ukraine inch by inch. You know, because of the Ukrainian people. I'm now thinking, dito tayo, kung bigla tayong pinasok ng China, anong gagawin natin? What are we going to do? You see, I still believe that dialogue is possible when it comes to our disputed territories. But this kind of dialogue will not work if we are not respected by China. Without respect, there will be no real dialogue between peoples. They have to respect us as a people. There's no respect. How can we be respected? When some of our leaders, sinabi ng China, atin yan, ano yan? Ano sagot ng mga leaders natin? Huwag tayo papatol dyan. Baka 5 minuto lang ay pupulbusin ang Maynila, kaya huwag tayong kakasadyan. Huwag natin papatulan yan. What kind of respect are we gaining by those kinds of statements? Yan ang nangyayari sa atin sa China. Diba? Tapos, yung iba naman, sige, subukan nila sumugod sa Pilipinas. Patay sila sa mga Amerikano. Pupunta lang tayo sa likod ng mga Amerikano, talo na yung China. Kung pupulbusin nila lang 5 minuto yung Maynila, pupulbusin ng Amerikano yung Beijing ng 2 minuto. See, how do you plan to gain the respect of our neighbors? For example, we have a dispute over China. Do you know we have another active dispute in Malaysia? The dispute in Malaysia is supposed to be sleeping. Ibig sabihin, walang galawan. Our claim to Sabah. And yet suddenly you have the Prime Minister of Sabah saying that we no longer honor the Philippine claim to Sabah. So, what are we going to do? Anong ginawa natin? Patay Malaysia, wala lang. You know? And do you expect us to be respected by our neighbor? You see, when I look at this particular mission, this pillar, wow. Nakakadugo ng puso yan eh. It will bleed your heart if you look at this particular mission of protector of the country's citizens, territory, and patrimony. That is why, what are the things that we need to do? Number 1, implement the constitutional provision that says that our kind of army should be citizens' army. What does that mean? To be a citizens' army instead of this kind of army that the communists are accusing to be mercenary in character. We have to convert this into a citizens' army, meaning every citizen of the Republic of the Philippines should be an integral part of the armed forces of the Philippines. Sabi nila, magastos. So what? This is our integrity as a nation. Number 2, all 18-year-old and above must undergo military training. Hindi ko ito pinopromote. Baka akala niya pinopromote ko yung Vice President candidate na galing sa Davao. Hindi. But sinabi niya ito eh. But she said it, and this is important. We must increase our reserve. I would say between 10 and 20 million. Can you see 10 and 20 million? Imagine it. 10, 20 million. Young people, Filipinos, marching in our streets, spending their weekends training. What will other nations think? Wow, 10 million Filipinos are preparing to fight. Lagot tayo dyan. Oh. But we will say no. We don't like war. But do not challenge us, because we will stand our ground. These are to me are important steps that we need to do to be able to implement this one.
All right.
We need that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. This one, the next mission or mechanism, sort of relates back to the one about the first one, meaning the best of citizens or in government. This one speaks about front office services being 5 stars, meaning the physical layout, facilities, and management of government front office services that are in direct contact with the people are rendered professionally with efficiency, honesty, and within time limits in a 5-star environment.
I am very happy that you included physical layout. I remember my class in the national uh, in the I forgot the name of my school, and this is National Defense College of the Philippines. We studied this one. We cited Skinner. I- and Skinner said that the structures affect the behavior of people. I think a very important statement. Physical layout will be important. Facilities management, government front office services that are in direct contact with. Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes na naman ako. Yes na
So,
naman ako.
so this would be something that your administration, sir, would push for as well.
In fact, the whole
Okay.
pamphlet.
Sir, there are several copies pa po. Okay, next, Mission E, the 12 traits of good governance. Based on the United Nations and aspirations of the citizens, the following traits of good governance are in place and in practice. Number 1, citizens' participation, representation, and fair elections. Number 2, rule of law. Third, competence and capacity. Fourth, ethical conduct. Fifth, long-term orientation and sustainability. Number 6, efficiency and effectiveness. Number 7, openness and transparency. Number 8, responsive and consensus-oriented. 9, innovation and openness to change. Number 10, sound financial management. Number 11, accountability. And number 12, equitable and inclusive social cohesiveness. So I think accountability is also something that you touched on and discussed earlier.
I have been talking too much. I will just say yes to all of this.
But this
You know,
actually
but
pertains
yes.
to the things that you have discussed, sir.
Yes, this is really, really, I'm really very happy that I attended this interview. Very happy. Very happy.
Thank you for being here today, sir. At this point, we open the floor to questions. First, here in the room, if there are any questions. If none, we move to Zoom. Do we have questions via Zoom? None. Okay, sir, kasi that means you explained very thoroughly already your thoughts on the pillar of government. Now we move on to the fourth pillar, infrastructure and environment. Our compass here is heaven on earth. And the first implementing mechanism provided by the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands, God-given attractions, meaning natural geographic attractions that are unique to the Philippines, are identified and their uses are controlled and subjected to carrying capacity limits with no-build zones, with carrying capacity limits at any time for residents, workers, and tourist visitors. God-given attractions should not be diluted by man-made attractions unless they are for accessibility and safety that protects and preserves the natural attraction itself.
Wow, wow. You know, in one of my speeches several years back when I was National Security Advisor, I said that you speak of tourism. In France they have about 50 million visitors per year. So is Italy, um, Spain, and why do people go to France? They want to see the Eiffel Tower and so on and so forth. I said, the attraction of France is about wonders that are man-made. But if we attract them to the Philippines, what we'll show them is God's work. God's work. That's why during the first year of the pandemic, I was inabutan ako sa one small mountain village in my province in Bataan. And so I decided to build a shrine. Build a shrine there. And it was very simple. I only have mga hagdanan, mga para makalakad ka ng maayos because it's in the mountains. So when you go to that shrine, you will be comfortable. You will not feel the malalaglag ka sa bangid o ganon. But then then people start going there and saying, "Wow, who is the architect of this shrine? So beautiful." And I said, guys, you better look again. Why are you saying na ang galing ng arkitekto? Ang ginawa lang naman dyan yung hagdanan, mga para mulakaran. Why are you saying that this is so beautiful? Because the mountain is just there. You see the mountain. Look to your left, you see Manila Bay. Then you breathe the air. You see the greenery. Different small animals wandering about. I said, that's not the work of architects and engineers. Those are God-given. You see? You are now going to ask me what is my
Your
attitude.
position, yes, sir.
I think you know already.
We will assume it's also a yes, sir.
Yes.
But sir, you also agree on the importance of limiting the number of
Oh, yes.
tourists in a particular attraction.
In fact, I almost forgot. This particular pillar is very important, especially because of climate change.
Mhm.
Eventually we will have to move to the mountains, to the forest, and we will have to have this requirement. We should not allow our people to live in the forest and then destroy the forest. We cannot allow that to happen. But this is going to happen sooner or than later. We will have to move up because the seas are rising, the temperatures are rising. We have to look for other places where we can live better. Unfortunately, these places where we can live better is where nature is also flourishing. No, we have to find the rules. Ito yung capacity limits. Okay, very important. Ito, very important.
Okay.
All this, if we have to protect what we have.
All right. Thank you, sir. Next, we talk about man-made infrastructure. Roads, bridges, and other infrastructure or structures must be world competitive as best in design, engineering, quality build, cost and time efficiency, with added disaster prevention measures against earthquakes and typhoons. Scientific basis is used to protect the natural habitat with nature allowed to do its wonders.
Yes din ito eh. Very yes. Titingnan lang natin ng kaunti yung design. Because when we say that we will declare all our regions as autonomous regions, it will change the entire infrastructure planning of the country. Because the centers will change. Every region must have, in the words of Palafox, every region must have a Singapore in its needs. Meaning nakatakot-takot na infrastructure adjustments ang gagawin natin. I was asked, what is your attitude towards build? Are you going to continue? Sabi ko, hindi, titignan muna natin mabuti. Kasi pag when you make regions autonomous, 17 regions, 17 regional centers, meaning the design will change. So yung mga build, titingnan natin kung nakapaloob dyan sa bagong design na gagawin natin before we say anything.
All right, thank you, sir. Next, islands, constraints, and two advantages. The geographic uniqueness of the country with earthquakes, typhoons, and many islands are met heads-on as challenges to connect the islands by designing and building the best airports, seaports, the best ICT and other new technologies, the best roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that can withstand adverse effects of earthquakes and typhoons.
This is it?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, we will. Sorry. Sorry. Baka maging busy kayo pag nanalo ako. kasi tingnan mo ito mga sinasabi nyo dito. Oh. This is exactly what we want to do.
All right. So, sir, would you come up with a separate department for to address disaster preparedness rather?
I do not believe in adding more
Mhm.
bureaucracy to the bureaucracy that we already have. In fact, I am thinking of subtracting.
Mhm.
Nasa kwan yan eh. Kasi tayo, what I have seen during my time, kaya ka lang naman nagagawa ng katakot-takot na department kasi ang daming mong utang politically. Gusto mo magkaroon ng mas maraming places for appointments. But I think, in fact, management lang ito eh, tsaka systems. No? So, for example, disaster. Pagka inihiwalay mo yan, laking problema. Kasi ang uutusan mo, armed forces eh. Tapos tatanggalin mo sa defense itong department mo ito, hihiwalay mo. Eh din kikilos yung bagong secretary, tatawag pa siya sa defense. Kasi hindi naman papayag ang defense na basta o-orderan mo yung mga sundalo niya. You see? Let's be careful about this business of just conceptualizing. Ang palagay ko, yung nag-design niya, nag-aambisyon na maging secretary. Yan.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we go to minimum space standards. The adage, a place for everything and everything in its place is followed as it applies to spaces for work, play, living, and public use. Public vehicles load and unload not on the road, but on designated indented stations away from the road. And public vehicles are dispatched sequentially based on scheduled interval times with no overtaking allowed. Residences close to workplaces are provided to lessen traffic and time commutes.
Totoo ito. If we follow this, halos wala na tayong traffic. This is my main appreciation of how we design our infrastructure. Kasi hindi natin binibigyan kasi ng space for particular activities that we encounter when we travel, for example. You know, we cannot distinguish between a highway and a road, for example. Hindi natin alam na pagka highway, walang stop-stop yan, tuloy-tuloy yan, di ba? Side road, pahinto-hinto yan. Eh yung highway, ginagawa ng ating road. In fact, ginagawa pa natin yan. Harap ng ating mga tindahan, di lalo lang masisira yung purpose ng highway. You know, this is very important. Defining the role of particular places. Yeah, you know, Mr. President, sorry to say to you again. You know, we have to gather the experts for this. You know, this is done in most advanced countries in the world.
Yes, like
Dito
our
lang sa
neighbors.
atin, I don't know if it's lack of money or lack of good sense. Good sense, no? Yes.
Thank you,
Good sense.
Mr. Gonzales. Next, we go on to the last, energy sources varied and safe. A mixed combination of energy sources from traditional to renewables to nuclear and other new technologies such as modular nuclear power plants can be adopted for as long as they're scientifically safe, clean, and cost-efficient combinations. Something you sort of
You
touched
know,
on, sir.
in my government, the expert is Milo Brado. He is going to be our energy expert. I will dismiss him already. You have it already. You already have it. We are very particular about these new technologies in nuclear power. Very particular, especially not only the modular, but also this type of Milo, you assist me, ha? This type of yung radioactive material that we will be needing for the nuclear plant, because I think China and India, although it came from the US in the 50s, that we have this radioactive material that can be used for fuel, na tinanggihan ng mga Amerikano kasi gusto nila more powerful para magamit for weapon systems. Eh ngayon, this was already available in the 50s, imagine. But the Americans put it on the side. The Chinese and the Indians are now picking it up and making new technology, new sources of nuclear power. Eh, ang advantage nitong itinapon ng mga Amerikano, yung anong tawag nito, half-life? The half-life of this radioactive material is short. Meaning, pagkatapos mong gamitin, sandali lang mawawala na rin yung radioactive. Eh ngayon kasi ginagamit natin, 100,000 taon na hindi pa yata tapos may radioactive. So we have very, very serious difficulty safeguarding the waste of our nuclear power. But now the new technology is very, very exciting. Ito, I'm very glad you're. When did you write this? Because this is very advanced. This is very advanced. This is very advanced, and really our government, kung sakali ma-aksidente manalo ako, ito, this is the direction of our new source of energy. This one.
Thank you very much, sir. Are there any questions po from the floor or via Zoom about infrastructure and environment, the fourth pillar? None on Zoom and none from the room. Okay, so we move on to the fifth pillar. The fifth pillar is the economy, and the compass is diverse, self-reliant, and wealthy. The first mission or implementing mechanism, natural resources fuel local manufacturing and self-sufficiency. With an economy that uses its natural resources as inputs to manufacturing within the country to produce value-added end products for its own consumption and for export, self-sufficient in food and creating wealth from small, medium, large, and basic industries for final use or to feed the parts and component needs of other industries, including new technology.
I will have to ask the chamber one question, because when it comes to our economy, what we're saying is that what we want is an economy that is built not necessarily by just big capital, but we also want as many of our people to be part of the engine of growth of our economy, meaning that the very small, yan yung small, medium, large industries, not only the basic one, but just even the source of income, because many of our people today are not having work as a result of the pandemic. When I ask them, what do you want? Do you want ayuda? And they say, ayaw po namin ng ayuda kasi ninanakaw lang yan ng mga barangay captains. Ang gusto namin is work. If not in established companies, they want their own work created by them. Small businesses, sari-sari store, yung mga ngayon ang dami-daming nagsulputan na kung ano-anong trabaho because of the pandemic. Yung iba nga naghahatid lang ng pagkain, yung iba nagluluto ng pagkain. And when I ask them, how come you're not really doing this yet today? And what they're saying is, kasi po wala kaming kapital. And this is what I will ask from the chamber. I want to create a huge capital base na we will really lend to the small ones. And we will say, if yung mga malalaking korporasyon, kapag nagkakaproblema sila, they run to government and government really helps them. Sometimes we even give them sovereign guarantee, di ba? Yung kung nilang kinakailangan pondo, if they have to borrow abroad just to save the industry. And we will continue to do this. But how come we are not trusting the capital needs of our small people when they engage in business? Can we not create also some kind of a big fund na kung kinakailangan may sovereign guarantee pagka hiniram natin yan sa abroad, that we can give this to our little businesses, our people, to encourage also their entrepreneurial spirit and really forming new little businesses. We will say that we will trust our ordinary people when they engage in business or in enterprises as sources of their income and livelihood. We will give it ang nangyayari daw kasi ngayon maraming program ang government providing this. Pero patay na yung negosyo, wala pa yung kapital kasi sa dami ng requirements. And I said, again, this is because we don't trust our small people. We don't trust them. That is why katakot-takot na requirements yung kinukuha natin before we give them capital. But supposing we start on the premise of trust, we trust our people. Kung kailangan nila ng kapital sa kanilang mga maliliit na negosyo, let's give it to them. Supposing hindi nagbayad, we guarantee. Kasi I'm afraid that our lending institutions, kahit yung mga banks, iba-iba yan eh. Ayaw magbigay kaagad kasi natatakot baka hindi bayaran eh. But supposing guarantees na kung hindi mabayaran, sasagutin itong fund na ito. That kind of fund. I would seriously ask the chamber for this. If you want me to write a letter, except that ang heading ko hindi pa Malacanang, I'm not the president yet, pero kung sakali, we will write the chamber about this because I think it's a common concern for us na matulungan natin yung mga maliliit na negosyante na kung ang capital ang kulang, magtiwala tayo, let's lend it them. Kaya nga pag nagsasalita ako dito sa mga crowds ng ating tao, I tell them, dalawa lang ang requirements. Number one, you must pay your debts. Number two, you must pay your taxes. I am telling them that please understand that when you pay your taxes, it's not an obligation to government. Taxes are investments to the future. If you want a better future for your kids, pay taxes because where will government get the funds to build the future? Yun lang ang requirement. Kahit mahirap, dapat nagbabayad lahat ng tax.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we go to Mission B, an encompassing economy that incorporates four sectors. Number one, primary sector, the extraction or taking of raw materials. These can be renewable resources such as fish, agri-based products, or wind and water power. Or it can be the use of non-renewable resources such as oil extraction, mining for coal, and other minerals. The primary sector must be used to fuel the secondary sector. The secondary sector, manufacturing industries that use raw materials from within the country and abroad and combines them to produce higher value-added finished products. The secondary sector makes and distributes finished goods. Manufacturing, example, producing cars from aluminum, construction, building homes, factories, and utilities, providing goods like electricity, gas, and communications. The third is the service or tertiary sector. Services that provide the intangible aspect of offering services to consumers and businesses. This includes retail, financial services, insurance, investment, leisure and hospitality, communication, transportation, information technology, etc. And the fourth is the quaternary knowledge sector, the intellectual aspect of the economy that includes education, training, development of technology, research, and development. And this enables entrepreneurs to innovate better manufacturing processes and improve the quality of services offered by the economy. Very detailed po, sir.
Yung number three, can I confidently say na medyo maayos na tayo dito? Can I say that? Itong number three, parang meron na tayo nito, di ba? This is okay. I'm worried about number one and number two. Ang ginagawa natin kanito buy and sell lang tayo dito, di ba? Hindi natin ginagawa ito no? We have to do something about number one and number two. Yung number three, I think we're okay. Number four, kailangan ng improvement ng ating educational system and probably send more scholars abroad para dito.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mission C, an economy that promotes, rewards, and nurtures its citizens for innovation and success, while nurturing and retraining those left behind to be competitive again or to find other areas of excellence and have a meaningful life.
Super yes.
The
Really
granting
good.
of
Really
incentives
good.
po, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mission D talks about Filipinos and effective control. meaning with a self reliant economy that protects the lives, health, and patrimony of the people from globalization, supply chain disruptions, and from foreign control. The participation of foreign owned controlled companies and foreign governments are welcome but dispersed for a global power balance and to avoid monopolistic control by one country.
I know what you will tell me. It's our politicians. I know. Our problem here are our politicians. I wish that our politicians will begin to consider having political parties with particular or specific ideologies. Because all of this can be discussed or, for example, in the case of my party, we're social democrats. And we have our own models of economies, societies. And this will go natural pagka pinag-aaralan ng mga politicians. Unfortunately, our politicians are really solo-solo eh. Kaya walang ganito. We have discussed this disperse in global power balance already. Yeah. Puro yes na lang ako talaga.
Eto, sir, this is the last. Actually, this is the last implementing mechanism for the last pillar, the top 100 economy. So with a GDP per capita of at least top 100% of countries worldwide, poverty and unemployment rates both below 3% of the population. Is this something that we can achieve, sir?
What do you think? You think? This is a goal. This is a beautiful goal. You think? Yeah. What is that saying again about the history building the future?
History builds the future.
History builds the future. This is our history. So it will be our objective to build the future. From this, yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from the floor or online? None. All right. So, sir, this is actually this brings us to the end of the 5 pillars. Sir, you kept saying that this is something that you are truly in agreement with. Mr. Yulo will tell you that the Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Islands has been working on these economic compass pillars for several years, sir. Seven? Am I right, sir? 7 years to come up with this, po. So, at this point, we'd like to ask Mr. Yulo if he has a closing statement before former Secretary Gonzales.
We would like to thank the Secretary for taking time out to go through our economic compass. We're very glad to note that our hard work for the last 7 years sort of more or less almost 100% coincides with the thoughts of Secretary Gonzales. No? We are pleased to inform the Secretary that so far we have had 4 or 5 presidentials that have addressed us. And I think almost most of them are amenable or agreeable with the contents of the compass, save a few on the energy concept of nuclear energy and so forth, no? And others who are a little bit leftist in their ideals. But more or less, in general, I think we're over 90% in agreement. So we hope that as we go to a formal launch of the economic compass sometime in 2022, after a new administration is in place, we will now be able to disseminate this more to the public at large and to schools and to the whole Philippines, no? As a mechanism for us to recover our once glorious past. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yulo. Former Secretary Gonzales, perhaps you also have your closing statement for everyone here today.
Well, I'm running for president. In the beginning, I'm not too serious about that because I know that I do not have the right ingredients to make that possible. Now, I still don't have the right ingredients to make that possible, really, in the context of our electoral practice. But the more I encounter our people, it is becoming almost a mission and an obligation to win this election. At ngayon pa na-encounter ko pa itong pamphlet. I thank the chamber. This is a very good paper. A job well done. Um, Saves a lot of work in the part of government, because I think it contains a essential policy for making sure that our economy move in a direction deserving of the thanks of our nation. No, ito nakita ko talaga dito. I'm very thankful. So, let's see. I'm not making any promise. I don't know if I will win or lose. In case I do, I will visit this place again.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. And with that, our forum this afternoon comes to a close. But we'd like to ask former Secretary Gonzales and Mr. Yu to please remain on stage for a photo opportunity. And we'll also ask Attorney Benedicto to join you up here for the photo op. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Good questions.
Okay, guys. So, nakita na po ninyo yung yung plataforma at kasagutan ni Mr. Norberto Norberto B. Gonzales. Nabubulol ako, guys. Former Secretary of National Defense and National Security Advisor, and of course, a presidential aspirant. So, bawat isa po dito sa mga ipapalabas po natin dito sa ating programang Usapang Kabayan is mostly mga presidentiables muna. Okay? And I hope sana po kilatisin po natin yung lahat ng ating iboboto, lalo-lalo na sa pagiging sa mga presidentiable candidates, sa vice presidents, sa senators, di ba? Congressmen, and of course dun sa ating mga local politicians. Dapat kilatisin po natin isa-isa. Although napakahirap po talaga nito na bawat kandidato dapat nating kilatisin ang kanilang educational background, ano ang family background nila, 'di ba? Ano nagkaroon ba sila ng issue of corruption before, 'di ba? And dapat tingnan po natin lahat ng anggulo. Kasi alam niyo po, pag nagkamali po tayo muli sa halal ng tamang presidente, tamang mga politiko dito sa ating bansa, okay, nahahawak muli sa ating bansa for another 6 years, naku po, ay kumbaga talagang pahirap po ito sa atin. At sana, kumbaga, ang maiboto po natin is, kumbaga, karapat-dapat na maging mag-lead sa ating bansa, karapat-dapat na magkaroon ng pagbabago, karapat-dapat na magkaroon ng unity, karapat-dapat na kumbaga mag-lead sa ating bansa, lalong-lalo na sa international, 'di ba, na magkaroon tayo ng maraming kumbaga job sa ating mga kababayan, kasi dahil nga ito sa nangyari recently at hanggang ngayon ay nagsasuffer pa rin tayo dito sa ating COVID-19, di ba? Halos na-diskaril ang ating economy, okay? So even us, we are also affected of this pandemic. Kaya sana po, yun lang po ang ano. Kaya po kami nagtsatsaga. Kami pong mga lahat ng merong mga digital program po dito sa social media, kami po ay nagtsatsaga na maiparating po sa inyo ang aming, kumbaga lahat ng presidentiables kung maaari sana ay mai-guest po natin dito sa ating programa para isa-isahin natin na mahimay ang kanilang mga plataporma, isa-isahin din natin mahimay ang kanilang background, isa-isahin natin mahimay sino ba sila at karapat-dapat ba silang mag-lead o maging presidente ng ating bansa, maging presidente, maging vice president, at or kaya umupo, 'di ba? Umupo sa tamang posisyon na kanilang tinatakbuhan sa ngayon. So, let's hope and pray po sana na ang manalo po sa susunod pong election this May 9 ay yung mga karapat-dapat po na kandidato. Yung kumbaga less evil, 'di ba? Maka-Diyos, makatao, 'di ba? At kumbaga kasi hindi naman ho lahat ng tao o kandidato ay perfecto. So may mga pagkakamali. Tao lang ho tayo, hindi tayo Diyos, okay? Pero sana po ang ma-elect po natin o pag-isipan po nating mabuti. Itong programang Usapang Kabayan ay wala po kaming pinapanigan ng mga kandidato. Okay, wala kaming pinapanigan. We are just neutral kasi nasa media industry po tayo. So, kami po ay naglalahad ng iba't ibang kandidato para matulungan po natin ang ating mga kababayan na makapag-isip, makapag-choose, ano pa ang tawag doon? Makapamili, 'di ba? Tayo po ay isang medium lang para maibigay natin sa kanila yung mga tamang kandidato na dapat nilang iboto sa darating pong election May 9. Okay? At actually, isang buwan na lang, kailangan na po nating kumbaga, final decision kung sino po ang magli-lead for another 6 years sa ating pong bansa. At sana po, yun po ang aking hinihiling na sana ay magkaroon tayo ng eleksyon na tahimik, peaceful, 'di ba? Walang dayaan, 'di ba? Kumbaga, kung sino pa talaga yung gusto ng tao o tamang desisyon ng mga tao, ayun po sana ang kumbaga palarin or kumbaga i-ano natin sa Diyos na sana ay magkaroon ng peaceful na halalan at makapag-isip po tayo, ulitin ko, makapag-isip po tayo ng tama, 'di ba po? Makapag-isip tayo ng tama para magkaroon po tayo ng isang mapayapang eleksyon, isang kumbaga magli-lead sa ating bansa na tawag dito, yung hangga't maaari yun nga, less ang corruption, 'di ba? Less ang padri-padrino, 'di ba? Kumbaga, in short, yung tamang presidente, tamang vice president, tamang mga senador, 'di ba? Yung tamang mga kongresista, yung tamang lokal na mga politiko na tutulong sa ating mga Pilipino upang tayo po ay makabangon, upang tayo magkaroon ng unity, upang tayo ay maging kumbaga matulungan ng ating mga mamamayan na magkaroon po ng magandang buhay, magandang edukasyon, magandang kinabukasan. At yan naman po lahat ay yan po ay alam kong hindi lang ako ang may pangarap na maging for the next 6 years ay maging ganito ang ating bansa. Alam ko lahat naman po tayo mga kababayan natin. Kaya nga po nandito po kami upang tumulong sa inyo na makapag-isip, makapag-desisyon kung sino po ang tamang kandidato na dapat po nating iboto upang mag-lead po sa ating bansa sa darating pong May 9, 2022 election. So anyway guys, maraming salamat po. Abangan po ninyo yung susunod po nating episode. Another presidential candidate aspirants dahil sa medyo nga po na medyo masyadong matagal yung gap po ng ating programa. Kaya ito po sunod-sunod po nating ilalagay at sana po makapag-isip po tayo ng mabuti. So anyway guys, maraming salamat sa lahat po ng nanood at wag po kayo mag-atubili na mag-comment. Pwede naman po kayo mag-comment at magtanong regarding po dun sa ating mga ipinalabas po ngayon. Mag-join po tayo sa open forum dito sa Chamber of Commerce of the Philippine Island at isa rin po sila sa medium na tumutulong para sa ating mga Pilipino upang makapagdesisyon ng tama kung sino ang ating dapat iboto sa darating na May 9, 2022. Anyway guys, abangan po ninyo yung susunod nating episode ngayong araw po na to. Maraming salamat at sana po maging maayos po tayo. Stay safe and happy weekend to all of you guys. Happy weekend and good morning to all of you. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and of course, kahit po sa ibang bansa ay mapapanood po itong programang ito. And of course, yung mga OFWs, di ba? Sana makapag-decide din po tayo ng tama. Kami po ay nandito upang tumulong po sa inyo, upang makatulong para mabigyan po natin ng knowledge ang ating mga kababayan kung sino po ba talaga ang dapat natin pong iboto at mag-lead sa ating bansa. Anyway guys, good morning to all of you. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat, Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, and of course abroad. Maraming salamat. Bye!